used to speak about the idea as well. The Shloh Kodesh writes that there's a Gavaldige Segula, and merely mentioning the Shemus HaParshas, the names of the Parshas, and clearly, anytime we want to try and tackle the essence of a Parsha or know what's going on, one of the first places we glance is the name of the Parsha, and certainly what grabs our attention is there are only two Parshas in Chamisha Chumshei Torah that borrow from the conjugation, the Shoresh of Tzav. Hatzadi Vav. Now we have a parsha that's called Tzav. It's the second and the third of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. On the heels of Vayikra, we encounter Tzav. The opening Rashi ain't Tzav Ella Loshen Ziras Miyad Uladairas Amar Rabbi Shimon Stam Rabbi Shimon Rechai. There's a need for Ziras in a Mokum where there's a Chisor and Kiss, and the Rishon and the Meforshim are all bothered. What's the emphasis on Chisor and Kiss Befrat in conjunction with a Korban Olah? The korban with which we begin the discussion, that which is under the spotlight Parsha Tzav. But that's the opening Rashi. Tzav is Loshen Zirus. We wanted to add on to that that the source of every mitzvah, Dahainu, the pnimius of every mitzvah, spelled Mem Tzadi Vav Hey. What's an integral component of every mitzvah? Tzadi Vav. Dahainu what? The idea of Tzav, the idea of Ziz Rizus, the idea of Psochim, Davdal and Aleph, Zrizin, Magdim and Lemitzis. We have it also Rosh Hashanah Lamed Beis and Yom Chavches. The idea of Zrizis, the tour, the Mechaber. How do we begin Shochrach? You got to get up in the morning. Alokam Yiskaber Kari with an Indian of Zrizis, right? So Ruben Gazovsky, the Torah Das Rosh Hashiva, and his Sichas and Parshas Bo, the tour, the Shochrach. How do we begin? You got to be Mazaris. The Schol has to be with the Ziras. The Feiner Taiti, it's very Geshmak. You have Machlaikis Rosh Hashanah Yad Aleph. Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Yeshua is the road created in Tishrei or Nisan. Taisus later on, Chavzayin and Aleph, B'Shem Rabbeinu Tam, Eilav Eilav Dilikim Chayim. So the world began either with Nisan or with Tishrei. Gishmak, where does Rizim Akdim al Mitzvahs appear? Meseches Rosh Hashanah Lamed Beis, in Yom Chavches, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The beginning of the year, in what? Zok Tehillah Taisus. And the Olam HaMachshava, the world began with Chodesh Tishrei, and the Olam HaMaisi with Chodesh Nisan, Segavadik Rosh Hashanah and Yuma, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. That's where we encounter Zriza Magdimin and Imsochim. We encounter Zriza Magdimin, Davdalit, very Geshmak, at the beginning of the year. Whether you're going to focus on Machshava, whether you're going to focus on Maisa, it's got to begin with Zrizus. How do we learn out Zrizus? Menayin. The Zriza Magdimin, that's from Avram Avinu, Vayashkim, Avraham Baboker. Very Geshmak. Avram Avinu, the one who starts Yiddishkeit begins with an Indian of Zrizis. Where's it going to be couched? I'll be the Klal of Rav Tzadok. Davke Meseches Psochim. Learn from Avram Avinu, the two rights in Echos Rosh Chodesh and Orchaim Simon Tov Yud Zayin. The three Regolim correspond to the three Ovis. Avram Avinu corresponds to Pesach. You bet. Very Geshmak. Avram Avinu is Pesach. Avram Avinu is the source of Zrizis. Pesach is Chipozen. Bechipozen Yotzu Mitzrayim. Ha Pesach with the Hey Yediyah. The Feiner Taiti Gematria 153. Bechipozen 153. The first Pesach must be in Bechipozin. By the way, there's only one place in Shas, and we talk about how the first Pesach was eaten, was done b'chipos, where's that? In Meseches Psochim, quite expectedly, but on which daf? Not coincidentally, perhaps, on daf Tzadi Vav, very Geshmak. On daf Tzadi Vav, in Meseches Psochim, Ein Tzav L'Loshen Ziris, that's where we have Chipos, and how Pesach, Gemara 153, Gematria b'chipos, Memela encoded, encrypted, into the essence, the pinimus of every Maisa Mitzvah, the Feiner Taiti is what? Mem Tzadi Vav, the essence of a mitzvah, it's got to be done. Zrizin Magdim and the mitzvah Tzadi Vav, right there in the middle, which is corroboration. The Chayra to Ruben Gazovsky. We have a famous Mishnah Bura in Hilchos Shmoneh Esrei. Hilchos Tefillah and Orchaim Simon Tzadi and Sivkot and Chovches. The Mishmur Paskins, the famous Tshuva, the Rabaz, Chelik Dalet Simon Yud Gimel, it's a Tshuva. By the Rivosh as well, Kuf Tzadi Tes, Neged the Chochem Tzvi and Kavav. We have a big Machlokes Aposkim. When it's matched up, Zris and Makdim and Mitzvahs versus Barovam Hadras Melech, should you be Madif, the Barovam Hadras Melech, the Hiddur, the Mitzvah, that it's done Ba'ofen Muvchor B'Yoser, should you be Madif, Zris and Makdim? The way we paskin is that we're Madif, Zris and Makdim and Mitzvah. So what's the Hezber? Dr. Ruben Gazovsky, because Zrizis is not the Zayt Gemaila. It's not, by the way, you did a Maisa Mitzvah, so you could do a Maisa Mitzvah stam, or you could do it Ba'ofen Mitzvah Minamuvchor. The Hainu with the Kim of Rav Hadras Melech. Zrizis is not a Zayt Gemaila. It's not, by the wayside. Zrizis is an essential Chelik in a Maisa Mitzvah. How do we see that? Zogt of Hunder and Pachriitzik and Pesach Hamaimer Aleph. What's the famous Mechilt and Parshas Bo? Perkid Beis Pasuk Zayin. We have Ushmartem Esa Matzis. Al Tigrius Alamasis Alatza Mitzvah Mitzvah Bol Yadcha Tachmitzena. Now you might think, what if a mitzvah is Bol Yadcha and you didn't do it in an open of Zrizah, so you missed out on a side to Gamaila. You missed out on an incidental Maila to the mitzvah. No, you see what you made it Chometz. Mitzvah Bol Yadcha. If you didn't do it in an open of Zrizah, Al Tachmitzena. The Imam made it Chometz. Adds the give us Pinchas or Pinchas Mikuritz Mitamidei Habesh. He writes in his give us Pinchas more than you made a Chometz. If you eat Chometz, you chayiv Koretz. You see that when you do a mitzvah and it's not done in ofen of Zrizus, it's a pagam. Ad kedekach, you made the mitzvah Chometz Al Tachmitzena, and Chometz comes with a chiv of a nechrusa. And what's the hezbollah? It's the famous Maral. Maral writes. Nesiva Solam and Nesiva Torah and Perkid Zayin took the Maral. The reason why it's so essential, such an integral component, so pivotal to a Ma'aseh V'Kima mitzvah, explains the Maral, is because if you wait for the mitzvah to come to you, then you say the mitzvah is Tachas Mai Shlitas Azman. If you jump the gun, a Zor is someone who's filled with alacrity, with zeal, enthusiasm. Brennus House, what does he do? He's mocked him. He says, no, I'm not going to wait for the mitzvah to come into my realm, my dimension of time. I'm going to jump the gun. I'm going to go out and I'm going to greet the mitzvah before it comes into the world of Teva. Because the mitzvah is be'etzem l'maylim in Teva. It's Loshen Tzavsa, writes the Maral. Tzavsa in the company with his schabers, dveikis. It's the way I attach yourself to Rabbi Yolam. I don't want to wait until the mitzvah comes tachas, the memsholas hazman and the olam Teva. I want to jump the gun. The Zoras is maktib. And that's Pesach, that's chipos and very geshmak. That's the source, the pinimis of every ma'aseh mitzvah. Lefi and yestaiti is tzadi vav. Ain't tzava l'loshen zirus v'meila. You have to be a Zoris. And who are this reason? Obviously, where are we going to find it? Yeah, it's a few places in Shas, but the first is what? We have it in Shabbos anyway, but Psochim, Samachayim and Alf, Kohanim, Zerizim, hey. Kohanim, Zerizim, hey. They're filled with Zerizas, ain't Savalosh and Ziras. You have to be Mazaris, the Kohanim, the Balei Avodah. It's very geschmack. From whom do we know the Musuk of Zerizos? We have the Posuk in Mishlei. Chochami Kolodim Shlomo tells us a Perek Vav, Posuk Vav. Leichel Namola Atzel V'Chakei. The lazy person has to go to the Namola, to the ant. You go to the ant, and you see these ants, these guys are never sleeping, they're running all over the place. The hustle and bustle of the working ants, they're always running all over the place, right? It's the Medrash and Dvarim Rabbah. What's so unique about this reason of an ant? An ant only lives the max Shisha Chadoshim, 6 months, and it collects enough food to last for at least a year and a half. When is any ant going to wake up? Don't they have a Messiah? Didn't they ask their father and the Tati and the Zaini? By the way, there's no relationship of grandparents and Einaklach in the animal kingdom, by the way. They do have a relationship of parents and children. That's, of course, the Manesra of Achule, Osav Yespano, and Parshas Emor, and the Ramban, Homachlekes, Rambam, when it comes to Kiseitze Percha Beis, by Shluch HaKein, they have a relationship of parent and child, no relationship of grandparents. But L'chaira, some is Sora in the ant kingdom. No ants ever lived more than 6 months. And these Meshuggahs are wasting away their lives, running all over the place, collecting. All they need is a chit and a chetzi, and they're collecting more food, getting the leftover barbecues, and the leftover shul kedushim. Always tons of leftovers, and the ants are all over the place. Why don't they wake up and just relax a little bit, you ants? Take a little, get a suntan a little, stop running around. Teretz Zoris. Why? Because they're lamaylam nazman. Zok Vuner Pachar Yitzik and Pesach Mamralav. They have no hasog of zman. They're running around as if they're going to live forever. When they don't live forever, they don't live more than 6 months, but they run around as if we have to learn Zrizis. What? It's Lamaylam and Asman. Lamaylam and Atzev, and that's why Zrizis is Gufa Lecha Namola. Go to the ant who has no asokas of Zman, and that's where you're going to learn Zman. Phineas Daiti, who are this recent, Kohanim on this recent. No coincidence, perhaps. The Phineas Daiti, Nemola is Gematria 125. Kohanim, Gematria 125. The Kohanim are the Nemola of our generation. They're this recent. How do we know that? Psochim. Of course, it's going to be Psochim, the source of Bechipozin. Ha Pesach 153, Bechipozin 153, Nemola 125, Kohanim 125. They are those reasons. So, Mamela, when we're holding by the Avodas HaKarbonis, what's that parsha going to be? Tzav, Karbonis, Ain't Tzav, Eloshen, Zirus, Miyad, Ladoris, Rashi, Alpi, the Sifra, the Torah's Kohanim, and of course the Gemara on the bottom of Chavtesim and Aleph and Kedushin. So that's Tzav. Rabbi said this week we're coming over to a Titzaveh. So I should expect the same Rashi, right? Tzav, Zirus, Miyad, Ladoris, Zok Rashi, V'ata Titzaveh, Zach, Bali Shemar, nothing about V'ata, nothing about Titzaveh. Yes, the Orchaim HaKodesh and the Kli Yakar, the Barmanel, and so many Mefarshim, everyone's bothered. What's the V'ata? What's a Titzaveh? Titzaveh in the end of the day. Rashi's quiet to no Tzav, and Lamaisa the Orchaim HaKodesh has to go, why didn't it say Tzav? Or Loshen of Amir, Dibber, it's a Loshen of Titzaveh. Rabbi said, needs a beer though. There's no Tzav over here. Clearly, even though we have two parshas, Tzav, Titzaveh, Tzav, that's Zeras, that's Miyadu Ludoras. Titzaveh seems to be something else here. Titzaveh is introducing the menorah. And of course, the question that beckons our scrutiny, that asks us, Rabbi say, what's going on here? What's this mitzvah? Stam was I doing here? I just said teruma. So I talked about collecting the nedavos. I'm going to build the mishkan. I'm going to build all the clay sharis, all the clay mikdash. And then we go into the baalei havoda, the hainu of the kohanim. But yeah, we're mafsik. Before we get to ata hakre v'lecha sarah nechicha v'ezbonavito, that'll be mamish 3 psukim from now. You'll bring over Aaron and bonavito when his solachan oli. You're going to have Aaron nodav aviu losei tamar, and you're going to make big day kodesh chavnavas. What do we have right now? We're starting with what? We're starting with 2 psukim ata. This isn't the parsha of the menorah. That we'll have later. Kliyakar cites in the name of the Barba. No, the Ikar parsha is in Emor. That's when it talks about La'alos and Talmud. That's when we'll have later on in Baal Loischas and Eirah. What's it doing over here? What's the Indian of menorah? And maybe with that we can answer the Titzaveh. So I saw Gevaldig Mahalech and the 4 hours remaining. Both say we'll be quick. It was Siyata D'Shmayim. A Gevaldiga Hezbar by Rav Avram of Weinfeld, the Baal Mechaber Shal Shechuvas Lev Avra. And Rav Avram Weinfeld says like this. He says, we're about to inaugurate and consecrate the Kohanim. And that's the gist, what lies at the crux of this week's Parshas Titzaveh, the inauguration, consecration of the Kohanim. Ata Hakre V'lecha and Achicha, the Begodim, the Kohen, the Teferes. We're talking about the Begodim, the Kohen Hedge, Kohen Gadol. This is inaugurating the Kohanim. What are the tafkidim of the Kohanim? It comes down to 2 primary tafkidim. Tafkid number 1 is what? To bring the Dvar Hashem to Bnei Yisrael, to be Malamed Klal Yisrael, to teach them to be Madrich Lem and Derech HaYoshar. That's the last of the Nevi'im, Malachi, and Perek Beis Pasuk Zayin. Ki Sisei Kohen Yishmur Das Torah Yevakshim Piyu. Ki Malach Hashem Tzavokasu. Those who lom Daf Yomi, you just had a Moikot in your Zayin, you'll have it again. Chagigat says Vav. You need a Rebbe, a Rav who is Domel Malach Hashem Tzavokas. In the context of what? In the context of Yevakshim Piyu, what? Ki Sisei Kohen Yishmur Das. You got to learn from the Kohanim. So they're the ones who are teaching us. You have to Yom Mishvatech Yaakov, as the pasuk says. Who's going to teach us? Sheva Levi. Oh, Sheva Levi, Sheva Yisachar, Marava, Amasik Shvaisa Libaducha. So that's Levi. Let's go to the Rabbi Mukhas of Azor Parakal Balocha Gimel. We had Yehuda's Gavaldi Machoke, Yehuda Ayin Sanhedrin Hayim and Aleph, and they have Dava to the Tzivs Hamak Shelo and the Shultas. Abalamaisa, we have what? Machoke Yehuda. He's a Dayan. He's a Shofet. We have Lei Yisachar. He's the Chamagrim. He's the quintessential Masmid. But who's the Rosh Hashiva? Hivdil Levi, Uminei the Rosh Hashiva. Levi's Rosh Hashiva. He's Yerush Tekla Yaakov. He's Masik Shvayz and Libaduchasa. That's the tafkid of what? Shluchi the Rachmana, Abishter's messenger, to represent God and teaching Torah to Klal Yisrael, being Matruchas and Derech HaYashar. Tafkid number 2, of course, is to be the Ovdei and Machamdei Habayis, to tend to the needs of the Mishkan and clean and be the ones in charge of the Avodah, to achieve a kapar for Klal Yisrael, Ayidei HaKrovas HaKabanis. So that's what? That's not as much for God as much as for Klal Yisrael. 2 tafkidim, writes the Lev Avram. It's all marumas in Yerush Tekla Yaakov. Saros Chali Yisrael. It's Tafka Rishon to do what? To teach Klal Yisrael. What Tafka number 2 is the pasuk continues in V'zos Brachal Amid Gimel. Yasimu Ketorah B'Pecha V'Cholol Amizbechecha. They're the ones who are going to go ahead and take care of the Keteris and the Kabbanis and the Mizbeach, and they're going to be the Baalei Avodah. So there's a big tafkid, a big distinction between the 2 tafkidim. Tafkid number 1 doesn't have to be exclusively the Kohanim. And when it comes to teaching Klal Yisrael, we have the famous Rambam at the end of Zroy Menucha Shemitah V'Yovel Perkid Gimel Halachid Gimel Zok Deilig Rambam V'lo Shevet Levi Bovan Ela Kol Ish V'ish Mikol B'Yolam Asher Nodva Rucha Oso Avevinu Meidei Lahavdol Amor L'Fnei Hashem L'Shosu Liavdol Ladas Es Hashem Halach Yosher. He's an Eskanish Kodesh. You could be considered figuratively like a member of Sheva Levi. Talmud Chochem is Babachina Sheva Levi, someone who's sitting Yom B'Layla and teaching Klal. So a famous Rambam. So writes the Lev Avram Givaldik. How we find the Gemara in the Dharma Samach Beis, Bnei David Kohanim. How you? What do you mean they weren't Kohanim? Bnei David, that's Shevi Yehuda. No, because they were Bebechinas Tamid Chachamim. And Tamid Chachamim can be metaphorically classified as Kohanim. That's the Rambam Shvita Yova. Mashake. The Avodas HaKabodas is exclusive to the Kohanim, to Sheva Levi. And Azar who does the Avodas Chaim Isa. Mela comes out very geshmak. What's happening in this week's parsha? In this week's parsha, we're inaugurating and consecrating the Kohanim, and we're about to talk 3 psukim from now in the opening pasuk of Perek Ches, separating the Kohanim, Aaron, Chichaves, Bonov, and they're going to do the avoda. That's the chelik of the avoda, and that's Meshe Shaychi Ach V'Rak to the Kohanim and the descendants, the science of Sheva Levi. That's miyucha to them. But we want you to know, right after we talked about the Mishkan, you know what's going to be first? The menorah. What's the menorah? Chochmah, the Zayin Kon. Menorah connected the Zayin Chochmes. V'chila Oro Tzarch. This is the Hashos Shechina. Aydei Chochmas HaTorah. All the Neiros Abato to the Ner Hamarovi connected Chochmas HaTorah. So when it comes to the Ner Hamarovi, the menorah, this is what? This isn't miyuchad ach v'rak to the Kohanim, solely exclusively to Sheva Levi. This is like the Rambam. Anyone who's a Talmid Chacham can be daimeh to a Malach Hashem Tzavakas. Goes back into the pasuk of Sifsei Kohen Yishmu Das Nedarim Samach Beis V'chi Abedei David Kohanim. So that's Mesha Shaychi to God's Klal Yisrael. Right, so Levavam Gishmak, and Mela, when it comes to Alokas and Neiros, the Rambam Shita is, and even the Ravid who argues, he says, but if a Zar lights the menorah, it's kosher. Shita Rambam is Alokas and Neiros L'chachila, is Ksheira Bezarim. Why? Because the menorahs can get Chochmah. Chochmah doesn't have to be exclusively a Kohen, someone Mesheva Levi. It can even be what? A Stam Taman Chocham. So now it's very Gishmak, Zok the Levavam. The Ata Titzaveh. What's Ata Titzaveh? Zok Tikunei Zohar. Every Tamar Chocham, there's a Nitza to spark a Moshe that goes into every single Talmid Chacham. That's why we find numerous times in Shas, L'moshel Shabbos Kefala from the base, Moshe Shapir Ka'amris, the Talmid Chacham is Bebechinas Moshe. There's a Heliga, holy spark of Moshe that goes into every Talmid Chacham. And Mela, what's the beginning of the 6th parsha? We're not up yet to separating the Kohanim. When it comes to the Avodas HaMishkan, you're right, that's solely, exclusively their domain. That's going to be their Begodim, the covenant of first. They're going to do the Avodah. Before we get there, what do we have? What's V'ata? V'ata Titzaveh. What's Titzaveh? It's not only Lashon zeros, as we have later on in Tzav. That's why the Phineas Daiti Rashi is silent over here. What's Titzaveh over here? Over here, Titzaveh is Lashon like the Maral. Tzav said to be in the company with Zok the Lev Avram. V'ata Titzaveh. Moshe Rabbeinu. Ata you, the Talmid Chacham. Moshe is Moshe Rabbeinu. Titzaveh should connect yourself to every Talmid Chacham and teach them what? V'yichwei lecha Shem and Zayisach. That every Talmid Chacham can be shaykh to the menorah. That's why we're mafsik when it comes to the menorah, lahalos ner tamid, to be a Talmid Chacham and to be osik, and the consecration of the Kohanim al tafkin number 1 to be malabi Torah to Klal Yisrael. That's shaykh to every Talmid Chacham. So before we get to hakrei v'lecha, before you separate the Kohanim, let's talk about the menorah Chachmas HaTorah. That's shaykh to every Talmid Chacham, even if you're not a proud member of Sheva Levi. Once we finish that, the menorah, the Chachmas HaTorah, the Ata you Titzaveh will be Tzav, so you Moshe will connect every Talmid Chacham. Then what? Okay, now we're done. We finished Tafkin number 1. Let's go on to Tafkin number 2. Now we'll separate them when it comes to the consecration mitzvah, the avodah. 2 parshas going on to Tzav and Phineas Daiti. When it emerges, it's very geshmak. There are 2 parshas in Chamisha Chumshei Torah that borrow from the Lashon of Tzav. So why is Rashi silent? Why do I have to wait 5 parshas when I want to get to Vayikra? Rashi, tell me right now that Tzav is Miyad and Zuladiris, as some of the Mepharshim even Tanka say. Tell me Zrisus, the Phineas Daiti, no. That's the lesson of Kohanim. There's reason, hey. That'll be when we're talking exclusively to the Kohanim. That'll be in Parshas Tzav when it comes to the Balei Avoda, who are Makrib the Korbanola V'chule. But over here at Tzav, what's this? I'll be the Lev Avram, it's Kishmak, Ve'ata Tzav. You Moshe Shapa Kamros will attach yourself to every Talmid Chacham. It's Tafkin number 1. So now it's V'ata Titzaveh Gevaldik. It's not Miyalados. The Ikra lesson over here is Titzaveh, not the Nin of Zrizus, as much as turning the spotlight on the Tzav, so on the Chibur and the Dvekus. You could be the Talmid Chacham who was doubled to Bechinas Moshe Rabbeinu. It's Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the Chacham that he was, and that's before we separate the Kohanim. You also could be Shaykh too. Sifsei Kohen, Yeshua Das, V'Torah, Doima L'Machashem Tzavakas. You could also be a Kim of the Rambam Shmita V'Yova Yud Gimel. Should be Zayich V'Siyata D'Shmayim Et Hashem. Should be Zayich to have the avoda itself with binyan by a shlishi. Be as called saying, "Hey, Rabbi Yemenu, Amei B'Meinu, good enough to the Gamal the Gavach, Gesund the Vach, Ben Rachanani, Merkash Yom Tzok Yisrael, Zag Yisrael."